Margaret Chen clutched her worn leather purse tighter as she stepped through the gleaming glass doors of Meridian Plaza, one of the city's most exclusive shopping centers. The marble floors reflected the crystal chandeliers overhead, and every surface seemed to sparkle with an opulence that made her feel like an intruder in her own city. She shouldn't be here. The sensible part of her mind whispered what she already knew, that her simple navy cardigan and department store jeans marked her as clearly out of place among the designer-clad shoppers who glided past her with practiced indifference. But today was different. Today was special. Her daughter Emma was graduating from nursing school next week, the first person in their family to earn a college degree. 22 years of double shifts at the hospital, of choosing between groceries and electricity bills, of wearing the same 3 outfits to work because scrubs were expensive, all of it had led to this moment. Emma deserved something beautiful, something that said how proud her mother was, even if it meant Margaret would be eating ramen for the next month. The jewelry store she'd researched online was on the 3rd floor, tucked between a boutique that sold handbags worth more than her car and a watch store where the cheapest timepiece cost more than her monthly rent. Margaret had called ahead to confirm they had the necklace she'd seen in their online catalog. A simple silver pendant with a small sapphire, Emma's birthstone. It wasn't expensive by the standards of this place, but it represented 3 months of saved tips and skipped lunches. She was studying the directory, trying to orient herself in the maze of luxury, when she heard the first snicker. "Oh my God, look at that," a voice said behind her, pitched just loud enough to be heard, but quiet enough to maintain plausible deniability. Did someone let the cleaning lady shop during business hours? Margaret's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes on the directory. She'd dealt with worse during her 22 years as a night shift nurse. Entitled patients, condescending doctors, family members who treated her like she was invisible. She'd learned to let the words roll off her back. But something about being in this place, surrounded by wealth she'd never possess, made the casual cruelty sting more than usual. Seriously, what is she even doing here? Another voice chimed in, this one belonging to a woman whose laugh sounded like breaking glass. "I mean, look at those shoes. I think my housekeeper has better taste." Margaret glanced down at her sensible black flats, the ones she'd bought 3 years ago because they were comfortable for 12-hour shifts and went with everything. They were clean, well-maintained, but undeniably practical rather than fashionable. "Maybe she's lost," suggested a male voice dripping with false concern. "Poor thing probably wandered in from the bus stop. Someone should call security," the first woman said, her voice gaining confidence as others joined in the cruel entertainment. "I mean, this is a private establishment. They have standards." Margaret finally turned to face her tormentors, and her heart sank. There were 5 of them, 3 women and 2 men, all impeccably dressed, all wearing the kind of casual confidence that came from never having to worry about money. The women clutched designer handbags that cost more than Margaret made in 6 months, while the men wore watches that could have paid for Emma's entire education. "Excuse me," Margaret said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm just trying to find a store. I'm not bothering anyone." "Oh, it talks," one of the women said with mock surprise. She was blonde, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of artificial perfection that spoke of expensive procedures and personal trainers. "How quaint." "Listen, sweetie," another woman said, her tone dripping with condescension. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. This isn't really the kind of place for people like you. There's a lovely Walmart about 10 minutes from here. Much more your speed. I have every right to be here," Margaret replied, her voice gaining strength. "I'm a paying customer." "Paying customer?" The blonde woman laughed, a sound like nails on chalkboard. "With what, food stamps? Honey, the cheapest thing in this place costs more than your entire outfit." "Actually," one of the men interjected, pulling out his phone, "I'm calling security. This is getting uncomfortable. We shouldn't have to deal with this kind of element when we're trying to shop." Margaret felt her face flush with humiliation and anger. She'd faced down violent patients, worked through natural disasters, held dying children in her arms while their parents fell apart. But somehow, standing here in this temple to excess while entitled strangers mocked her for the crime of being ordinary, she felt smaller than she had in years. "Please," she said, hating the way her voice cracked. "I just want to buy a gift for my daughter. I'm not causing any trouble." "Your daughter?" The blonde woman's eyebrows rose in theatrical surprise. "Oh, that's rich. Let me guess. She's probably just as classy as her mother." What's the gift for her parole hearing? The group erupted in laughter, and Margaret felt something break inside her chest. She'd endured their mockery of her clothes, her appearance, her obvious lack of wealth. But attacking Emma, brilliant, kind, hard-working Emma, who'd overcome every obstacle life had thrown at her, that was too much. My daughter, Margaret said, her voice shaking with controlled fury, is graduating from nursing school. She's going to help people, save lives, make the world a better place, which is more than I can say for any of you. Oh, how noble, the blonde sneered. Another working-class hero, how original. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The voice belonged to a security guard who'd appeared as if summoned by the earlier phone call. He was young, probably not much older than Emma, and he looked uncomfortable with the situation but determined to do his job. I haven't done anything wrong, Margaret protested. I'm just trying to shop. You're making other customers uncomfortable, the guard said, his eyes flicking toward the group of tormentors who were watching the scene with obvious satisfaction. This is a private establishment, and we reserve the right to refuse service. To anyone who doesn't meet your standards? Margaret asked bitterly. To anyone who doesn't belong here, the blonde woman interjected, her voice triumphant. Face it, honey, you're out of your league. Margaret felt tears threatening, but she refused to give these people the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She was about to turn and leave, to abandon her plan and find some other way to celebrate Emma's achievement, when a new voice cut through the tension like a blade. I'm sorry, but what exactly is the problem here? The voice was male, cultured, with the kind of quiet authority that made everyone in the immediate vicinity turn to look. Margaret found herself staring at a man who seemed to have stepped out of a magazine. Tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and striking features that belonged on a movie screen. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, but there was something in his dark eyes that suggested depths beyond mere wealth. Oh, thank God, the blonde woman said, immediately shifting her demeanor to something she probably thought was charming. Finally, someone with sense. We were just trying to explain to this person that she's in the wrong place. The man's gaze moved from the group to Margaret, and for a moment she saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition? Surprise? It was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. I see, he said slowly. And what makes you think she's in the wrong place? Well, obviously, one of the other women said with a laugh. Just look at her. This is Meridian Plaza, not a thrift store. I'm looking at her, the man replied, his voice carrying a subtle edge that made the laughter die in the woman's throat. I see someone who's being harassed for the crime of existing in a public space. What I don't see is any reason why she shouldn't be here. Public space? The blonde woman's voice rose in indignation. This is a private shopping center. We have standards. Standards, the man repeated, and there was something in the way he said the word that made Margaret shiver. Tell me, what standards exactly? The standard that says kindness is less valuable than designer labels? The standard that judges a person's worth by the price of their shoes? Look, buddy, one of the men said, stepping forward with the aggressive posture of someone used to intimidating others. I don't know who you think you are, but this isn't your business. The stranger's smile was sharp as a knife. Actually, it is my business. Quite literally. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone, speed dialing a number with practiced ease. Yes, it's me. I need you to pull up the ownership records for Meridian Plaza. Yes, I'll wait. The group exchanged uncertain glances, their confidence beginning to waver. Margaret found herself holding her breath, unsure what was happening, but sensing that the dynamic had shifted in some fundamental way. Ah, yes, the man said into his phone, his eyes never leaving the group of tormentors. As I thought. The property is owned by Blackthorn Holdings, which is a subsidiary of Nightfall Enterprises, which is controlled by... He paused dramatically. Me. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret watched as the color drained from the blonde woman's face as the men who'd been so aggressive moments before suddenly found the floor fascinating. Now then, the man continued, pocketing his phone, let me make something very clear. This woman has every right to be here. More right than people who think wealth gives them license to be cruel. So I'm going to give you a choice. He stepped closer to the group, and Margaret noticed that despite his civilized appearance, there was something predatory in the way he moved, something that made her think of apex predators and ancient dangers. You can apologize to this lady for your inexcusable behavior, and then you can leave. Or you can continue to act like the entitled children you apparently are, and I can have security escort you out and ban you from every property I own in this city." "You can't do that," the blonde woman protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Can I? Would you like to test that theory?" His smile was all teeth. "I own this mall, the office building where your husband works, the country club where you play tennis, and the restaurant where you had lunch yesterday. I could make your social lives very complicated." The threat hung in the air like a sword. Margaret watched, fascinated despite herself, as these people who'd been so confident in their cruelty just moments before crumbled under the weight of real power. "This is ridiculous," one of the men muttered, but he was already backing away. "Come on, let's go. This place has gone downhill anyway." "Apologize," the stranger said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Now." The blonde woman looked like she'd swallowed something bitter, but she managed to choke out, "Sorry," without meeting Margaret's eyes. "Louder," the man commanded, and with sincerity. "I'm sorry," the woman said, her voice stronger but filled with resentment. "I was inappropriate." "Yes, you were. Now leave, all of you. And if I hear that you've treated anyone else this way, our next conversation will be much less pleasant." The group scattered like leaves before a storm, their designer heels clicking against the marble as they fled. The security guard, who'd been watching the entire exchange with growing alarm, cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, I didn't realize, if I'd known, you were doing your job as you understood it," the man said, his voice gentler now. "But perhaps in the future you might consider that someone's appearance isn't always an indicator of their right to be somewhere." "Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir." "Good. Now I believe this lady was trying to shop in peace. Perhaps you could ensure she's not disturbed again." "Of course, sir. Ma'am, please accept my apologies. If there's anything you need, anything at all." Margaret found her voice at last. "Thank you, but I think I should go." "Nonsense," the stranger said, turning his attention to her. "You came here for a reason. Don't let those people rob you of your purpose." Up close, his eyes were even more striking. Dark brown with flecks of gold, ancient-looking despite his apparent youth. There was something familiar about him, something that nagged at the edges of her memory, but she couldn't quite place it. "I don't understand," she said. "Why did you help me? You don't even know me." Something flickered across his expression again, that same look of recognition she'd noticed before. "Don't I? What do you mean?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her self-conscious. Then slowly, he smiled. Not the predatory expression he'd worn while dealing with her tormentors, but something warmer, more genuine. 20 years ago, he said softly, a young woman was brought to St. Mary's Hospital in the middle of the night. She was unusual, different. Most of the staff were afraid of her, wanted nothing to do with her. But there was one nurse who didn't care that she was strange, who treated her with kindness and compassion when everyone else saw only something to be feared. Margaret's breath caught. The girl with the fever, the one who wouldn't let anyone touch her except you, he finished. You sat with her all night, held her hand when she was scared, sang to her when she couldn't sleep. You saved her life, not just medically, but in every way that mattered. She was just a child, Margaret whispered, the memory flooding back. Maybe 12 or 13, she was so frightened, so alone. Her brother brought her in, but he couldn't stay because of hospital policies. Hospital policies about visiting hours, yes. He had to leave her with strangers, trust that someone would care for her the way he couldn't. The man's voice was thick with emotion. That someone was you. Her brother? Margaret said slowly, pieces clicking into place. You're her brother. I am. And that little girl grew up to become a doctor herself, inspired by the kindness of a nurse who showed her that healing was about more than medicine. It was about compassion. Margaret felt tears pricking her eyes. Is she all right? She's wonderful. Brilliant. She runs a clinic for underprivileged children now, and she credits you with showing her what it means to truly care for people. He paused. She's never forgotten you, and neither have I. I was just doing my job. No, he said firmly. You were doing far more than your job. You were being human in the best possible way. Margaret didn't know what to say. The memory of that night was clear now. The strange, beautiful child who'd been brought in with a fever that wouldn't break, who'd spoken in whispers about being different, about not belonging. Margaret had seen only a frightened little girl who needed comfort, and she'd provided it without question. "What's your name?" she asked. "Adrian," he said. "Adrian Blackthorne." "Margaret Chen." She hesitated. "You said you own this place?" "Among other things. I've been successful in business." Something in his tone suggested there was more to the story, but Margaret didn't press. "I still don't understand why you helped me just now. I mean, I appreciate it, but why would someone like me care about someone like you?" Adrian's expression darkened. "Because that's exactly the kind of thinking that created this situation in the first place. The idea that a person's worth is determined by their wealth, or status, or appearance. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. And the answer is simple. I helped you because you're a good person who deserved better than what those people were giving you. Because 20 years ago, you showed kindness to someone who desperately needed it, and that kindness changed 2 lives forever." Margaret felt overwhelmed by the intensity of his gratitude, by the strange turn her day had taken. "I should go. I've caused enough trouble." The only trouble here was caused by people who confused cruelty with superiority. Adrian stepped closer, and she caught a hint of his cologne, something expensive and subtle that reminded her of winter nights and distant stars. "You came here to buy something for your daughter?" "A graduation gift. She's finishing nursing school, following in her mother's footsteps. She's going to be so much better than me. Smarter, more educated, more everything." "I doubt that," Adrian said softly. "Intelligence and education are valuable, but they're not the same thing as wisdom or compassion. Your daughter is lucky to have you as an example." Margaret felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You don't know anything about me, don't I? I know you're the kind of person who sits with frightened children in the middle of the night. I know you're willing to face humiliation and mockery to buy your daughter something special. I know you've spent 22 years working night shifts to put her through school." At her surprised look, he smiled. "I may have done some research over the years. I wanted to make sure the woman who saved my sister was all right. You've been watching me, checking on you occasionally, making sure you were safe, that you had what you needed. You never knew, of course. I tried to be subtle." Margaret thought about the times over the years when unexpected help had appeared. The scholarship that had covered Emma's last semester, the anonymous tip that had led to her getting the day shift position she'd wanted, the mysterious benefactor who'd paid for her car repairs when she couldn't afford them. "That was you," she said, not really asking. "Some of it, not all. You've had other people looking out for you too. Your daughter's professors, your colleagues, people who recognize your worth even if you don't always see it yourself. Why? Because good people deserve good things. Because kindness should be rewarded, not punished. Because—" He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "Because in all my years, in all my experience with people, I've rarely met someone as genuinely good as you are." There was something in his voice, something that suggested depths and experiences far beyond what his apparent age should allow. Margaret found herself studying his face more closely, noting details she'd missed before. The way his skin seemed almost luminous in the mall's artificial lighting. The way his movements had a fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman. The way his eyes held shadows that spoke of secrets and sorrows. "How old are you?" she asked suddenly. Adrian's smile was enigmatic. "Older than I look." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now." Before Margaret could press further, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled, despite the confusion of the last hour. "Emma?" she explained. "She's asking if I found the necklace I wanted to get her." "The necklace," Adrian said. "Right. That's why you're here. Come on." "Come on where?" "To buy your daughter's gift. I'm going with you." "You don't have to." "I want to. Besides, I know the owner of the jewelry store. He'll give you a good price." Margaret laughed despite herself. "Let me guess. You own that too?" "Actually, no. But Marcus is a friend and he owes me a favor or two." They walked through the mall together, and Margaret was acutely aware of how different the experience was with Adrian beside her. People stepped aside respectfully, store employees smiled and nodded, and she could feel curious eyes following their progress. It was like walking with royalty, she thought, then dismissed the fanciful notion. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they approached the jewelry store. "Of course. What kind of business are you in? I mean, you're obviously successful, but—" "Import, export primarily. Some real estate, some investments. I've been fortunate." Again, that sense that there was more to the story, but Margaret decided not to push. Whatever Adrian's secrets were, he'd earned the right to keep them by his kindness to her and his sister. The jewelry store was exactly as elegant as she'd expected, all gleaming cases and soft lighting. The owner, a distinguished man in his 50s, looked up as they entered and his face immediately brightened. "Adrian, what a pleasant surprise. What brings you here today?" "Hello, Marcus. I'd like you to meet Margaret Chen. She's looking for something special for her daughter." Marcus's demeanor shifted immediately, becoming warm and welcoming in a way that Margaret suspected was reserved for Adrian's friends. "Of course. What did you have in mind?" Margaret described the necklace she'd seen online, and Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "Ah yes, a lovely piece, let me show you." He retrieved the necklace from a case and Margaret's breath caught. It was even more beautiful in person. The silver chain was delicate but strong, and the sapphire caught the light like a captured star. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Excellent choice," Marcus said. "The sapphire is natural, not synthetic, and the setting is handcrafted. It's a piece that will last for generations." "How much?" Margaret asked, though she already knew the answer from her online research. "For you, my dear, let's call it 200. Margaret blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The website said 800. "Did it? How strange. I must have Marcus update that." Adrian's voice was casual, but there was something in his tone that suggested this price reduction wasn't as spontaneous as it seemed. "I can't accept that," Margaret protested. "It's not fair to Mr. Marcus," the jeweler supplied. "And please, it's my pleasure. Any friend of Adrian's is a friend of mine." "But, Margaret," Adrian said gently, "let me ask you something. If someone offered to help your daughter, to give her an opportunity or an advantage that would make her life better, would you tell her to refuse it? That's different. Is it? You've spent 22 years sacrificing for Emma's future. Let someone do something nice for you for once." Margaret looked between the two men, seeing genuine kindness in both their faces. Finally, she nodded. "Thank you, both of you. This means more than you know." As Marcus wrapped the necklace in an elegant box, Adrian moved closer to Margaret. "There's something else I'd like to ask you." "What?" "Have dinner with me. Tonight." Margaret nearly dropped her purse. What?" "Dinner. You and me. There's a restaurant I think you'd enjoy, and I'd like the chance to talk more, to really catch up." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because..." Margaret gestured helplessly at herself, then at him. "Look at us. Look at the difference between us. You're successful and sophisticated and probably used to dating supermodels or actresses or... I'm used to being around people who want something from me." Adrian interrupted. "Money, connections, influence. You're the first person I've met in years who doesn't seem to want anything except to be left alone to live your life and take care of your daughter." "That's not true. I want lots of things. Such as, I want Emma to be happy. I want to be good enough at my job to actually help people. I want to not worry about money all the time. I want..." She trailed off, realizing how simple her desires sounded compared to what someone like Adrian probably wanted. "You want to matter," he said softly. "You want your life to have meaning, to make a difference. You want to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. How did you? Because those are the things worth wanting. And Margaret, you already have all of them. You matter more than you know. Your life has already made a difference to your daughter, to my sister, to every patient you've ever cared for. And you are valued, at least by me." Margaret felt tears threatening again, but these were different from the ones she'd fought earlier. These came from a place of gratitude and wonder, from the strange magic of being truly seen by another person. "I don't know how to have dinner with someone like you," she admitted. "Someone like me? Rich, powerful, important. I'm not any of those things, not really. I'm just someone who's lived long enough to recognize something precious when I see it." Adrian's voice was gentle, but intense. "Have dinner with me, Margaret. Not because you owe me anything, not because I helped you today, but because I'd like to spend time with someone who reminds me what it means to be human." There was something in his phrasing, in the way he said human, that sent a small shiver down her spine. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw only sincerity and a loneliness that matched her own. "Okay," she said finally, "but somewhere casual. I don't own anything appropriate for the kind of places you probably go. I know just the place. There's a little Italian restaurant about 10 minutes from here. Family-owned, incredible food, and the dress code is come as you are. That sounds perfect. Good. I'll pick you up at 7? Margaret gave him her address, still not quite believing this was happening. As they left the jewelry store, she clutched Emma's gift and tried to process the surreal turn her day had taken. "Adrian," she said, as they reached the mall's entrance. "Yes? Thank you. For everything. I don't know why you did it, but thank you." "Thank you," he replied, "for reminding me that there are still good people in the world." As Margaret walked to her car, she found herself thinking about the strange, intense man who'd turned her humiliating morning into something magical. There were mysteries about him, secrets he wasn't sharing, but there was also a kindness that seemed to run bone deep. She thought about Emma, about the necklace that would represent not just her daughter's achievement, but also the unexpected generosity of strangers. She thought about the way Adrian had looked at her, not with pity or condescension, but with something that might have been respect. For the first time in years, Margaret Chen felt like she might be worth more than she'd believed. At exactly 7 o'clock, Margaret heard a soft knock on her apartment door. She'd spent the better part of an hour trying to decide what to wear, finally settling on her best pair of jeans and a simple blue blouse that Emma had given her for Christmas. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and comfortable and made her feel like herself. She opened the door to find Adrian standing in the hallway, and her breath caught. Gone was the intimidating businessman from the mall. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a simple black sweater that somehow made him look both more approachable and more devastatingly attractive. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her cheeks warm. "You don't have to say that. I don't say things I don't mean." He offered her his arm. "Shall we?" The restaurant was exactly as he'd described. Small, family-owned, with checkered tablecloths and the kind of warm atmosphere that spoke of generations of love and tradition. The owner, an elderly Italian woman named Rosa, greeted Adrian like a long-lost son and fussed over Margaret like she was bringing home a girlfriend to meet the family. "You eat too thin," Rosa declared, studying Margaret with the critical eye of someone who believed food was love made tangible. "Adrian, you make sure she eats. I bring you the good stuff. Rosa has been trying to fatten me up for 15 years, Adrian explained as they were seated at a corner table. "She's convinced I'm wasting away." 15 years? Margaret did quick math. "You would have been young," Adrian said smoothly. "I started coming here when I was just getting established in business." Again, that sense of evasion, of details that didn't quite add up. But the wine Rosa brought was excellent, and the food that followed was extraordinary, and Margaret found herself relaxing despite her nervousness. "Tell me about Emma," Adrian said over plates of pasta that smelled like heaven. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. What's she like? What kind of nurse does she want to be? What makes her happy?" Margaret's face lit up as she talked about her daughter. Emma's quick wit and fierce compassion, her determination to work in pediatric oncology despite the emotional toll, her habit of bringing home stray animals and lost causes. "She sounds remarkable," Adrian said when Margaret finally paused for breath. "She is. She's everything I hoped she could be and more than I ever dared dream. She gets that from you, you know. The compassion, the strength, the refusal to give up on people. I don't know about that. I do. I've seen you in action, remember? 20 years ago, you could have treated my sister like just another patient, done the minimum required and moved on. Instead, you gave her something she'd never had before. Unconditional kindness from a stranger. What was wrong with her?" Margaret asked gently. "I remember she was so frightened, so convinced that people would hurt her if they knew what she was." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass. "She was different, born with a condition that made her seem strange to people who didn't understand. Our family has a history of unusual traits. Genetic condition? Something like that." He looked up at her, and in the candlelight, his eyes seemed to glow with their own inner fire. "The important thing is that you saw past the strangeness to the child underneath. You gave her hope that she could be accepted for who she was. And now she's a doctor. Now she's a doctor who specializes in treating children with rare conditions, children who are often feared or misunderstood by others. She tells them about a nurse who showed her that being different doesn't mean being less worthy of love." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. "I had no idea." "How could you?" You were just being yourself, kind, compassionate, human in the best possible way. There was that word again, human, spoken with a weight that suggested deeper meaning. Margaret was about to ask about it when Rosa appeared with dessert and another bottle of wine, insisting they try her famous tiramisu. "So what about you?" Margaret asked, as they shared the decadent dessert. "What's your story? How did you build your business empire?" "Carefully," Adrian said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I've always been good at seeing opportunities others miss, at understanding what people really want. That's not really an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. Why? What's so mysterious about your past?" Adrian set down his fork and looked at her directly. "Margaret, there are things about me, about my family, that are complicated. Things that might be difficult for you to understand or accept. Try me. Not tonight. Tonight I just want to be a man having dinner with a woman he admires. Can that be enough for now?" There was something vulnerable in his request, something that spoke of loneliness and the weight of secrets. Margaret nodded. For now. They talked for hours after that, about books and movies and travel, about Margaret's work at the hospital, and Adrian's vague business dealings. He was an excellent listener, asking thoughtful questions and seeming genuinely interested in her answers. More than that, he made her feel interesting, like her thoughts and opinions mattered. "I should get you home," Adrian said finally, glancing at his watch. "You probably have to work tomorrow. Day shift, thankfully, one of the perks of seniority. The night shift must have been hard, especially with Emma at home. She was with my neighbor most nights, Mrs. Patterson. She's been like a grandmother to Emma. I don't know what we would have done without her." "Good neighbors are precious," Adrian agreed, "almost as precious as good friends." As they walked to his car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Margaret's annual salary, she found herself reluctant for the evening to end. "I had a wonderful time," she said as he opened her door. "So did I. More wonderful than I've had in a very long time." The drive to her apartment was comfortable, filled with easy conversation and the kind of companionable silence that spoke of genuine connection. When they reached her building, Adrian walked her to the door like a gentleman from another era. "Margaret," he said as she fumbled for her keys. "Yes? Would you like to do this again? Dinner, I mean. Or maybe something else. A movie, a museum, whatever you'd enjoy." "I'd like that," she said, surprised by how much she meant it. "Good. I'll call you." He leaned down and kissed her cheek, a gentle brush of lips that sent warmth spreading through her entire body. For a moment, she caught that scent again, winter and starlight, and something indefinably otherworldly. "Good night, Margaret." "Good night, Adrian." She watched from her window as he drove away, his taillights disappearing into the night like falling stars. Only then did she allow herself to acknowledge the truth that had been building all evening. She was falling for him, this mysterious, powerful man who'd appeared in her life like something out of a fairy tale. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Over the next few weeks, Adrian became a regular part of Margaret's life. He took her to art galleries and concerts, to quiet restaurants and moonlit walks in the park. He sent flowers to her work, not ostentatious arrangements that would embarrass her, but simple, elegant bouquets that brightened her day and made her colleagues smile. More importantly, he listened. He asked about her patients, her worries, her dreams for Emma's future. He remembered details from their conversations, followed up on stories she'd told him, showed genuine interest in the small dramas and victories that made up her daily life. "You're glowing," Emma observed during one of their weekly phone calls. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Margaret said, but she could hear the smile in her own voice. "Mom, I've known you for 22 years. You don't glow over nothing. Are you seeing someone?" Margaret hesitated. She and Emma had always been close, but how could she explain Adrian? How could she describe a man who seemed too good to be true, who carried himself like royalty but treated her like she was precious? "Maybe," she admitted finally. "Maybe. Mom, either you're dating someone or you're not. It's complicated. Is he married? No. Criminal? Emma. Then what's complicated about it? You like him, he likes you, you're both adults. Sounds pretty straightforward to me. He's different from me. Wealthy, sophisticated, important. I don't understand what he sees in me." "I do," Emma said firmly. He sees what I see. A woman who spent her entire life taking care of other people, who's kind and strong and beautiful inside and out. He sees someone worth loving. It's not love, Margaret protested. We've only been seeing each other for a few weeks. Okay, someone worth caring about then. Mom, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to have someone who appreciates you. I know, but nothing. You've spent 22 years putting my needs first, sacrificing your own happiness for mine. It's time to think about what you want, what she wanted. Margaret thought about that conversation as she got ready for another dinner with Adrian. What did she want? She wanted to keep feeling the way she felt when he looked at her. Valued, interesting, beautiful. She wanted to keep discovering new facets of his personality, keep being surprised by his thoughtfulness and humor. She wanted to solve the mystery of who he really was beneath the careful politeness and obvious wealth. Most of all, she wanted to stop feeling like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to realize she wasn't worth his time and attention. You're quiet tonight, Adrian observed over dinner at yet another restaurant she never could have afforded on her own. Just thinking. About this, about us. About why you're here with me instead of with someone more appropriate. Adrian set down his wine glass and leaned forward. Margaret, what would it take for you to believe that you're exactly where I want to be? I don't know. Maybe if I understood who you really are, what you really do, why you're interested in a middle-aged nurse who shops at Target and drives a 10-year-old Honda, and if the truth was stranger than you could imagine? If knowing who I really am changed everything between us? Would it? It might. Then maybe I don't want to know. Maybe you do. Maybe you're braver than you think. Margaret studied his face in the candlelight, noting again the ageless quality of his features, the way his eyes seemed to hold depths that spoke of experiences far beyond his apparent years. Tell me, she said quietly. Adrian was silent for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table in a nervous rhythm she'd never seen from him before. Not here, he said finally. Not in public. Come home with me tonight, and I'll tell you everything. Adrian, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just need privacy for this conversation. There are things about me that can't be discussed in restaurants or parks or anywhere others might overhear. Margaret felt a flutter of nervousness mixed with anticipation. Okay. Okay? Yes, I want to know who you really are. Adrian's home was a penthouse apartment that occupied the entire top floor of one of the city's most exclusive buildings. The elevator required a special key to reach his floor, and when the doors opened, Margaret stepped into a space that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights, while the interior was decorated with what she suspected were priceless antiques and original artwork. Everything spoke of wealth and taste accumulated over generations. This is incredible, she breathed, moving to the windows to take in the view. It's home, Adrian said simply. Can I get you something to drink? Wine, coffee, water? Wine, please. I think I'm going to need it. He poured 2 glasses of red wine from a bottle that probably cost more than her monthly rent, then joined her at the windows. Beautiful, isn't it? He said, looking out at the city spread below them. Beautiful and intimidating. I feel like I'm in a different world up here. You are, in a way. This is the world I live in. Isolated, elevated, removed from the everyday concerns of ordinary people. Is that how you see me? As ordinary? I see you as extraordinary. But yes, you live in the real world in a way that I haven't for a very long time. Margaret turned to face him fully. How long, Adrian? How old are you really? He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I was born in 1847. Margaret blinked, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? 1847. I'm 176 years old. That's not possible. Isn't it? Adrian moved away from the windows, beginning to pace the length of the room. You've seen things in your years as a nurse, Margaret. Unexplained recoveries, patients who survived when they shouldn't have, cases that defied medical explanation. Haven't you ever wondered if there might be more to the world than what science can explain? Yes, but you've never considered that some of those unexplained things might be standing right in front of you. Margaret set down her wine glass with shaking hands. You're saying you're, what, immortal? Not immortal. I can be killed, though it's difficult. But yes, I age very slowly, and I've been alive for nearly 2 centuries. That's impossible. Is it? Look at me, Margaret. Really look at me. She did, studying his face with the clinical eye she'd developed over decades of nursing. His skin was flawless, without the small lines and imperfections that marked even young faces. His hair was thick and lustrous, his teeth perfect, his body that of someone in peak physical condition. Most tellingly, his eyes held a depth of experience that no 30-year-old should possess. "How?" she whispered. "I'm a vampire." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge over an impossible chasm. Margaret felt the world tilt around her, reality reshaping itself to accommodate this new information. "A vampire," she repeated numbly. "Yes. Like Dracula. Fangs and blood and turning into bats? Some of the legends are true, some aren't. Yes, I need blood to survive, though I don't kill for it. Yes, I'm stronger and faster than humans, and I heal quickly from injuries. No, I don't turn into a bat, and sunlight won't kill me, though it's uncomfortable." Margaret sank into one of his expensive chairs, her mind reeling. "This is insane. I know how it sounds." "Do you? Because it sounds like you're either delusional or playing an elaborate prank on me." "I'm neither." Adrian knelt in front of her chair, his hands resting gently on her knees. "Margaret, I know this is a lot to process. I know it changes everything, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. How you feel about me." Margaret laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Adrian, you're telling me you're a mythical creature. You're telling me that everything I thought I knew about the world is wrong. How am I supposed to process that? The same way you processed everything else life has thrown at you, with courage and grace, and the strength that's carried you through 22 years of single motherhood. This is different. Is it? You've always known there was something unusual about me. You've felt it, haven't you? The way I move, the way I seem to know things I shouldn't, the way I look at you like I've been waiting centuries to find you. Have you? Been waiting centuries?" "Yes," he said simply. "I've been alive for 176 years, and I've never met anyone like you. I've never felt for anyone what I feel for you. What do you feel for me?" "Love," he said without hesitation. "I love your kindness, your strength, your absolute refusal to let the world make you bitter or cruel. I love the way you light up when you talk about Emma, the way you care for your patients, the way you see the best in people even when they don't deserve it." "You love me," Margaret repeated, testing the words. "I love you. But I'm human. I'm mortal. I'm going to age and die while you stay young forever. Not forever. And yes, you'll age, but slowly. There are ways, if you wanted them." "Ways to what?" "To extend your life. To give us more time together." Margaret stood abruptly, moving away from him. "You're talking about turning me into a vampire. I'm talking about giving us a chance at a real future together. By making me into a monster. Is that what you think I am? A monster?" Margaret turned to look at him. This man who'd shown her nothing but kindness, who'd defended her against cruelty, who'd spent weeks making her feel valued and cherished. "No," she said quietly. "But Adrian, this is too much. I need time to think." "Of course. Take all the time you need. I should go home. I'll drive you." "No, I'll call a cab. I need some space to process this." Adrian nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. "I understand. But Margaret?" "Yes?" "Whatever you decide, know that tonight doesn't change how I feel about you. You're still the woman who saved my sister, who's dedicated her life to helping others, who makes me want to be better than I am. You're still the woman I love." Margaret felt tears threatening. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just don't disappear on me. Please. Whatever else happens, let me keep you in my life somehow." "I won't disappear," she promised, though she wasn't sure how she could keep that promise when everything between them had just changed. The cab ride home passed in a blur of city lights and racing thoughts. Margaret's mind kept circling back to the same impossible truth. Adrian was a vampire, a creature from legends and horror movies, something that shouldn't exist in the real world of hospitals and grocery stores and parent-teacher conferences. But he did exist. He was real, and he was in love with her, and somehow that was the most unbelievable part of all. Margaret called in sick the next day, something she'd done perhaps 5 times in her entire career. She spent the morning in her pajamas, drinking coffee and staring at her phone, wanting to call Adrian, but not knowing what to say. Emma called around noon, her voice bright with excitement about her upcoming graduation. Margaret tried to match her daughter's enthusiasm, but Emma knew her too well. "Mom, what's wrong?" You sound terrible. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. Is this about the guy you're seeing? Did something happen? You could say that. Do you want to talk about it? Margaret almost laughed. How could she explain that the man she'd been falling for had revealed himself to be a creature from nightmares? How could she tell her practical scientific daughter that vampires were real, and one of them was in love with her mother? It's complicated, she said instead. Mom, you keep saying that, but you never explain what's complicated about it. Did he hurt you? Because if he did, I'll drive down there right now and… No, he didn't hurt me. He would never hurt me. It's just… He told me something about himself that I'm having trouble accepting. What kind of something? The kind that changes everything. Emma was quiet for a moment. Mom, can I tell you something? Of course. I've never heard you sound the way you have these past few weeks. Happy, I mean. Really, genuinely happy. Whatever this guy told you, whatever's so complicated about it, just remember that happiness is rare. Don't throw it away because it's not what you expected. After they hung up, Margaret found herself thinking about Emma's words. Happiness was rare, especially the kind she'd felt with Adrian. Was she really willing to give that up because he wasn't what she'd expected? But what did it mean to be in love with a vampire? What kind of future could they have? What would happen when she aged and he didn't? What would people think if they knew what he was? Her phone rang, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. Adrian's name appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, she answered. Hello. Margaret, how are you? Confused, overwhelmed, questioning my sanity. All reasonable responses. I was wondering, would you like to meet my sister? Your sister, the little girl you saved 20 years ago. She's a woman now, obviously, and she'd very much like to thank you in person. I don't know if that's a good idea right now. She's human, Margaret. Well, mostly human. She chose a different path than I did, but she remembers you, and she's been wanting to meet you again for years. Where? Wherever you're comfortable. Your apartment, a restaurant, the park, anywhere you feel safe. Safe. The word implied danger, and Margaret realized that despite everything, she'd never felt unsafe with Adrian. Confused, yes. Overwhelmed, certainly, but never in physical danger. The park, she said finally. The one near my apartment. There's a bench by the pond. I know the one. When? Now, if she's available. She'll be there in an hour. Margaret hung up and stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked tired, older than her 51 years, worn down by a night of sleepless worry. But there was something else in her reflection, a spark of curiosity that she hadn't felt in years. She was about to meet a vampire, a creature from legend, someone who'd lived for decades beyond normal human experience. Despite her fear and confusion, she found herself eager to see what Adrian's sister had become. The woman waiting by the pond was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with Adrian's dark hair and the same ageless quality to her features. But where Adrian carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to power, she had a gentleness that immediately put Margaret at ease. Margaret, she said, rising from the bench with a smile that transformed her entire face. I can't believe it's really you. You're so different from the little girl I remember. 20 years will do that. Though in my case, it's been a bit more complicated than normal aging. She gestured to the bench. May I? They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment, watching ducks paddle across the pond. My name is Lydia now, the woman said. Lydia Blackthorne. I chose it when I turned 18 and decided to make my own way in the world. Adrian said you became a doctor, pediatric oncology. I work with children who are fighting battles that seem impossible to win. Lydia's smile was soft. I tell them about a nurse who showed me that sometimes when everything seems hopeless, an angel appears to remind you that you're not alone. I'm not an angel, aren't you? You were to me. That night in the hospital when everyone else was afraid to touch me, afraid of what I might be, you just saw a scared little girl who needed comfort. You were a scared little girl. I was also something else. Something that most humans would find terrifying if they knew the truth. Lydia looked at her directly. I was a vampire child, Margaret. Born to vampire parents, struggling with abilities I didn't understand. Terrified that I was a monster. Margaret felt her breath catch. You were just a baby when you were turned? I wasn't turned. I was born this way. It's rare, but it happens sometimes when both parents are vampires. Lydia's expression grew thoughtful. That night when you held my hand and sang to me, you were the first person who'd ever touched me without fear. You showed me that I could be accepted for who I was, not what I was. And now? Now I've chosen to live as human as possible. I take supplements that suppress most of my vampiric traits, work during the day, age slowly but visibly. I've built a life that bridges both worlds. Is that possible? Living between two worlds? It's not easy, but it's possible. Especially when you have people who accept you for who you are. Lydia studied Margaret's face. Adrian told me what happened last night. How are you handling it? I don't know. I keep thinking I should be more afraid, more shocked. But mostly I'm just confused. About what? About why he told me. About what he wants from me. About whether any of this is real or if I'm having some kind of breakdown. Lydia laughed, a sound like silver bells. Trust me, you're not having a breakdown. My brother is very real and very much in love with you. How can you be sure? Because I've never seen him like this. Margaret, Adrian has been alive for nearly 2 centuries. He's had relationships before, but nothing like what he feels for you. You've changed him. How? He smiles now. Really smiles. Not just the polite expression he wears in business meetings. He talks about the future like it's something to look forward to instead of just something to endure. He's remembered what it feels like to hope. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. I don't understand what's so special about me. Don't you? You're kind without expecting anything in return. You're strong without being hard. You've spent your entire life taking care of others, making the world a little better just by being in it. Lydia reached over and took her hand. You remind him of what he used to be before centuries of isolation and responsibility made him forget his own humanity. But I am human, he's not. How can that work? The same way any relationship works, with love, patience, and the willingness to accept each other's differences. What about the practical things? What about aging? About the fact that I'll die while he lives on? Those are challenges, yes, but they're not insurmountable. There are ways to extend human life, to slow aging, to give you more time together. He mentioned that, turning me into a vampire. Is that what he said? Lydia looked surprised. Because that's not the only option. There are other ways, gentler ways that don't require giving up your humanity entirely. What do you mean? Blood sharing, for one. Small amounts, taken regularly, can extend human life significantly without the full transformation. There are also medical treatments, supplements derived from vampire biology that can slow aging and enhance healing. You're talking about science fiction. I'm talking about science that's centuries ahead of what humans have discovered on their own. Margaret, my people have been studying longevity and healing for millennia. We've learned things that could benefit humanity enormously, if we could find a way to share that knowledge safely. Margaret thought about that, about the implications of medical advances that could change everything. Why don't you? Share the knowledge, I mean. Fear, mostly. Fear of exposure, of being hunted, of starting a war between our species, but also, Lydia hesitated, also because many of my kind believe humans aren't ready for that kind of power. And what do you believe? I believe that keeping our world separate has caused more harm than good. I believe that cooperation could benefit everyone. And I believe that people like you, people who can see past the surface to what really matters, are the key to building that cooperation. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ducks and the families enjoying the afternoon sun. Finally, Margaret spoke. What should I do? What does your heart tell you? My heart tells me that I love him. Despite everything, despite the impossibility of it all, I love him. Then maybe that's your answer. It's not that simple, isn't it? Margaret, you've spent your entire life making practical choices, putting duty before desire, sacrificing your own happiness for others. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy? Margaret couldn't remember. Every major decision in her adult life had been about Emma, about providing for her daughter, about being responsible and practical and safe. I'm scared, she admitted. Of course you are. You're contemplating a relationship with someone from a different species, someone who's lived for centuries, someone whose world is completely foreign to yours. But Margaret, fear isn't always a reason to say no. Sometimes it's a reason to be brave. What if I'm not brave enough? You are. You've already proven that. You were brave enough to raise a daughter alone, brave enough to work night shifts for 22 years, brave enough to stand up to those horrible people at the mall. You're brave enough for this too. As Lydia prepared to leave, she turned back to Margaret with a gentle smile. Can I tell you something my brother probably won't? What? He's terrified too. He's terrified that you'll decide he's too different, too dangerous, too much of a risk. He's terrified that he'll lose the best thing that's ever happened to him because he was honest about what he is. Really? Really? So whatever you decide, please don't keep him waiting too long. Uncertainty is harder to bear than rejection, even for someone who's lived as long as he has. That evening, Margaret found herself standing outside Adrian's building, her heart pounding as she worked up the courage to go inside. The doorman recognized her and smiled, directing her to the elevator with the kind of deference that suggested Adrian had left instructions about her. She used the key he'd given her weeks ago, riding the elevator to his penthouse with sweaty palms and a racing pulse. When the doors opened, she found him standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. "Margaret." He turned, and she could see the hope and fear warring in his expression. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either. How was your conversation with Lydia?" "Enlightening. She's remarkable, by the way. You should be proud of who she's become." "I am. She chose her own path, built her own life. She's everything I hoped she could be." She said, "You're terrified." Adrian's smile was rueful. She always was too perceptive for her own good. "Yes, I'm terrified. I'm terrified that I've destroyed the best thing in my life by being honest about what I am." "And what are you, Adrian?" "Really? I'm a man who's lived too long and seen too much, who'd forgotten what it felt like to hope for the future until I met you. I'm someone who's made mistakes, who's done things I'm not proud of, who's spent decades trying to atone for the monster I used to be." "What kind of monster?" "The kind that took what he wanted without considering the cost. The kind that saw humans as lesser beings, as sources of food and entertainment, rather than as people with their own hopes and dreams. And now I see you, and I remember what it means to be human. Not biologically, but in all the ways that matter. Compassion, love, the desire to protect and cherish rather than take and destroy." Margaret moved closer to him, studying his face in the soft lighting. "Lydia said there are ways to give us more time together, ways that don't require me to become a vampire. There are, if that's what you want." "What do you want?" "I want whatever gives us the best chance at happiness. If that means finding ways to extend your natural life, then that's what we'll do. If it means learning to love you for whatever time we have, knowing that I'll eventually lose you, then I'll accept that too. And if I wanted to become like you, fully vampire, then I'd make sure you understood exactly what that means. The good and the bad, the gifts and the costs. I'd make sure it was truly what you wanted, not something you felt pressured into." Margaret reached up and touched his face, feeling the coolness of his skin, the sharp line of his cheekbone. "I love you. I love you too. I don't understand how this can work. I don't understand how someone like you can love someone like me. But I know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. How do you feel about me? Like I've been waiting my whole life to find you. Like you see parts of me that I'd forgotten existed. Like maybe, for the first time in decades, I'm allowed to want something just for myself. You are allowed. You deserve to want things, to have things, to be cherished and valued and loved. Even by a vampire? Especially by this vampire." When he kissed her, it was with the desperate intensity of someone who'd thought he'd lost everything and found it again. Margaret melted into his embrace, feeling the strength in his arms, the careful control he maintained over his supernatural abilities. "Stay with me tonight," he whispered against her lips. "Adrian, not for anything you're not ready for. Just stay. Let me hold you. Let me prove that what I am doesn't change how I feel about you." Margaret looked into his storm gray eyes and saw centuries of loneliness, decades of isolation, and beneath it all, a love so pure and desperate that it took her breath away. "Okay," she said. "I'll stay." They spent the night talking, sharing stories and fears and dreams. Adrian told her about his early years as a vampire, about the mistakes he'd made and the lessons he'd learned. Margaret told him about Emma's childhood, about the struggles and joys of single motherhood, about the dreams she'd put aside to focus on survival. As dawn approached, Margaret found herself curled against Adrian's side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. That night at the mall when you helped me, you said you'd been checking on me over the years. How long have you been in love with me?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his fingers stroking through her hair. "Since that night in the hospital. Since I watched you comfort my sister when everyone else was afraid of her. I told myself it was gratitude, that I was just making sure you were safe because you'd helped my family. But the truth is I fell in love with your kindness that night, and I've been in love with you ever since. 20 years? 20 years of watching from a distance, of making sure you were safe and provided for, of telling myself that someday I'd find the courage to approach you properly. What changed? What made you finally reveal yourself? Seeing those people mock you, seeing them treat you like you were worthless when you're the most valuable person I've ever known. I couldn't stand by and watch that happen. So you bought a mall. I bought a mall, he agreed with a laugh, though technically I already owned it. I just hadn't mentioned that fact to the management company. How many properties do you own? Enough. I've had nearly 2 centuries to accumulate wealth, and I've been fortunate in my investments. Fortunate? Or do you have some kind of supernatural advantage? A bit of both. Enhanced senses help with reading people, with knowing when they're lying or when they're desperate enough to make bad decisions. But mostly it's just time and patience and the compound interest that comes from having a very long investment horizon. Margaret thought about that, about the implications of loving someone who'd had centuries to build wealth and power. I'll never be able to contribute equally to this relationship, will I? Financially, I mean. Margaret, you've already contributed more than I could ever repay. You've given me hope, love, a reason to believe in the future. You've reminded me what it means to be human. What could be more valuable than that? I'm serious, Adrian. I make $40,000 a year. You probably spend more than that on wine. Money doesn't matter to me. It's just a tool, a way to ensure security and comfort. What matters is finding someone who loves you for who you are, not what you can provide. And you think I love you for who you are? I hope you do. Because who I am, stripped of the wealth and power and supernatural abilities, is just a man who's been alone for too long and who's grateful beyond words to have found you. As the sun rose over the city, Margaret made a decision that would change the rest of her life. I want to try, she said. Try what? This. Us. Whatever it means to be in love with a vampire, I want to find out. Are you sure? No. But I'm sure that I love you, and I'm sure that I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. It won't be easy. There will be challenges, complications, things about my world that will be difficult for you to understand or accept. Then we'll face them together. Together, Adrian repeated, and the word sounded like a promise. 6 months later, Margaret stood in the audience at Emma's medical school graduation, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter accept her diploma. Beside her, Adrian squeezed her hand gently, his own eyes bright with emotion. She's remarkable, he whispered. Just like her mother, she's going to change the world. Margaret replied, her voice thick with pride. She already has. She changed yours, and through you, she changed mine. After the ceremony, Emma made her way through the crowd to where they were waiting. She'd met Adrian several times over the past months, and while Margaret hadn't told her the truth about what he was, Emma had accepted him with the same open heart she brought to everything else in her life. Mom! Emma threw her arms around Margaret, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. We did it. You did it, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. All those years of sacrifice, all those double shifts, this is as much your achievement as mine. Congratulations, Dr. Chen, Adrian said, offering Emma a formal handshake that she ignored in favor of a hug. Thank you for making my mom so happy, Emma said quietly so only he could hear. I haven't seen her smile this much in years. Thank you for raising such an extraordinary woman, Adrian replied. She's a credit to your love and guidance. That evening, the three of them celebrated at the same Italian restaurant where Adrian had first taken Margaret. Rosa fussed over Emma like a proud grandmother, insisting on bringing out her best wine and refusing to let them pay for anything. So what's next? Margaret asked as they shared dessert. Residency at Children's Hospital, Emma said. Pediatric oncology, just like I planned. I start in 2 weeks. And after that? After that, I want to work with underserved populations. Kids who don't have access to the best medical care, who need someone to fight for them. Adrian and Margaret exchanged glances. Over the past months, they'd discussed the possibility of using Adrian's resources to support exactly the kind of work Emma wanted to do. Actually, Adrian said carefully, I might be able to help with that. I've been looking into funding a clinic for children with rare diseases, children who need specialized care that's not always available through traditional channels. Really? Emma's eyes lit up. That would be amazing. There's such a need for that kind of facility. I was hoping you might be interested in helping to design it. Your perspective as someone who's trained in both traditional medicine and patient advocacy would be invaluable. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity to build something that could help thousands of children over the coming years. Emma looked between them, and Margaret could see her daughter's sharp mind working through the implications. This is about more than just medical care, isn't it? Emma said finally. There's something else going on here. Something you're not telling me. Margaret felt her heart race. They'd agreed to wait before telling Emma the truth about Adrian, to let her get used to the idea of them as a couple before adding the complication of supernatural revelation. What makes you say that? Adrian asked calmly. Because I'm not stupid. You're obviously wealthy beyond anything normal business success would explain. You move like someone who's used to physical confrontation, but you're too refined to be military or law enforcement. You know things about medicine that you shouldn't know unless you've had formal training, but there's no record of you attending medical school. Emma, Margaret began. And you, Emma continued, turning to her mother. You're different, healthier, stronger, younger looking than you were 6 months ago. It's subtle, but I'm a doctor. I notice things. Adrian and Margaret looked at each other, having a silent conversation with their eyes. What do you think is going on? Adrian asked carefully. I think you're involved in something that's not entirely legal or entirely normal. I think you have access to medical technology or treatments that aren't available to the general public. And I think whatever it is, it's the reason you want to fund a clinic for children with rare diseases. And how do you feel about that? Emma was quiet for a moment, considering. I feel like if you can help children who are suffering, I don't care how you do it. I feel like if you have access to treatments that could save lives, then we have an obligation to use them. Even if those treatments come from unconventional sources? Especially then, some of the greatest medical advances in history have come from unconventional sources. Adrian smiled, and Margaret could see him making a decision. Emma, he said, what would you say if I told you that there are people in this world who are different from normal humans? People who have abilities that seem impossible, who have access to knowledge and treatments that are centuries ahead of conventional medicine? I'd say that sounds like science fiction. And if I told you that some of those people want to use their abilities to help humanity, to share their knowledge in ways that could revolutionize medicine and save countless lives, I'd say that sounds too good to be true. And if I told you that I'm one of those people? Emma stared at him for a long moment, her medical training warring with the evidence of her own eyes. I'd say prove it. Adrian glanced around the restaurant, making sure they weren't being observed, then picked up a steak knife from the table. Before either woman could protest, he drew the blade across his palm, opening a deep cut that should have required stitches. Emma gasped, reaching for napkins to stop the bleeding, but Adrian held up his hand to stop her. As they watched, the cut began to close, the edges of the wound knitting together until nothing remained but a thin line of blood on unmarked skin. How? Emma whispered. Enhanced healing. It's one of several abilities that come with my condition. What condition? I'm a vampire, Emma. I've been alive for nearly 2 centuries, and I've spent the last 20 years in love with your mother. Emma looked between them, her scientific mind clearly struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. A vampire, she said finally. Yes, like blood-drinking, immortal, supernatural creature vampire, more or less. And you want to use your vampire abilities to help sick children? I want to use my knowledge and resources to help sick children. The fact that I'm a vampire is just context. Emma was quiet for a long time, staring at Adrian's unmarked palm. Finally, she looked up at her mother. Did you know? I found out 6 months ago. And you're okay with it? I'm in love with him, Emma. What he is doesn't change who he is. Who is he? He's the man who's made me happier than I've been in 20 years. He's someone who's dedicated his life to protecting and helping others. He's someone who sees the best in people and tries to bring it out. Emma turned back to Adrian. What do you want from me? I want your help building something that could change the world. I want your medical expertise, your compassion, your commitment to helping children who need advocates. And in return? In return, you get access to medical knowledge and treatments that could revolutionize pediatric care. You get the resources to build the kind of clinic you've always dreamed of. And you get the satisfaction of knowing that you're helping to bridge the gap between two worlds that have been separate for too long. Two worlds? Human and vampire. There are others like me, Emma. Others who want to help, who have knowledge and abilities that could benefit humanity enormously. But we've been afraid to reveal ourselves, afraid of how humans would react. And now I think it's time to try. Carefully, gradually, with people who can understand that being different doesn't mean being dangerous. Emma looked at her mother again. What do you think, Mom? I think, Margaret said carefully, that you've always wanted to help children who others have given up on. I think this is your chance to do that on a scale you never imagined possible. And the vampire thing doesn't bother you? It did at first, but Emma, I've seen who Adrian really is. I've seen his kindness, his compassion, his absolute commitment to using his abilities to help others. What he is matters less than who he is. Emma was quiet for another long moment, then suddenly laughed. You know what the funny thing is? What? Adrian asked. I've been dreaming about working with children who have impossible conditions, children who need treatments that don't exist yet. And now you're telling me that those treatments do exist. They're just not available through normal channels. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Then yes, Emma said firmly. Yes, I want to help. I want to build that clinic. I want to learn about these treatments. And I want to help you bridge the gap between our worlds, even knowing what I am, especially knowing what you are. Adrian, if vampires really exist, if there are people out there with abilities that could help my patients, then I want to be part of making that happen. Adrian's smile was radiant. Then welcome to the family, Dr. Chen. Family? Well, Adrian said, glancing at Margaret, there's something else we need to tell you. Margaret felt her heart skip as Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emma, he said, I'd like your permission to ask your mother to marry me. Emma's eyes went wide. Are you serious? Completely serious. I love your mother more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I want to spend whatever time we have together, and I want to do it with your blessing. Mom, Emma turned to Margaret, who was staring at the ring box with tears in her eyes. Adrian, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He slid out of his chair and knelt beside her, opening the box to reveal a ring that was simple and elegant and perfect. Margaret Chen, will you marry me? But I'm human. You're vampire. I'm going to age. We'll figure it out. Together. Will you marry me? Margaret looked at the ring, then at Adrian's hopeful face, then at Emma, who was crying and nodding enthusiastically. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. The restaurant erupted in applause as Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger. Rosa appeared with champagne and tears, declaring that this was the most romantic thing she'd ever witnessed in her establishment. As the celebration continued around them, Margaret found herself thinking about the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she'd been a lonely, middle-aged nurse who'd given up on the possibility of love. Now she was engaged to a vampire prince who wanted to change the world, and her daughter was going to help him do it. No regrets? Adrian asked quietly as they walked home through the city streets. None, Margaret said firmly. Well, maybe one. What's that? I wish I'd been brave enough to believe in fairy tales sooner. This isn't a fairy tale, love. This is real life with all the complications and challenges that come with it. I know. But Adrian? Yes? Sometimes real life is better than fairy tales. How so? Because in fairy tales, the prince rescues the princess. In real life, sometimes we rescue each other. Adrian stopped walking and pulled her into his arms, kissing her under the streetlights while the city moved around them. I love you, Margaret Chen. I love you too, Adrian Blackthorne. Now and always. As they continued home together, Margaret thought about the future that stretched ahead of them. A future filled with challenges and possibilities, with love and adventure, and the chance to build something beautiful together. She'd spent 51 years believing that her story was ordinary, that she was ordinary. Now she knew better. Everyone's story was extraordinary if you looked at it the right way. Everyone deserved love, respect, and the chance to be seen for who they really were. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found someone who saw all of that and loved you anyway. Even if that someone happened to be a vampire. What an absolutely magical transformation from humiliation to happily ever after. I'm still emotional from that moment when Adrian revealed his identity to defend Margaret. The way he went from mysterious businessman to powerful protector in seconds was absolutely breathtaking. And can we talk about that 20-year love story? The fact that he'd been quietly watching over her since that night in the hospital, falling in love with her kindness and waiting decades for the right moment to approach. That's the kind of epic romance that gives me chills. What did you think of Emma's reaction to learning Adrian was a vampire? Did her immediate acceptance feel realistic, or would you have expected more shock? If you loved this incredible tale of hidden identity, destined love, and the courage to stand up for what's right, please hit that subscribe button. I have so many more amazing stories waiting for you. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Margaret made the right choice in accepting Adrian's proposal? Or should she have been more cautious about the supernatural complications? And here's something that's been haunting me. Was Adrian's 20-year vigil romantic devotion, or slightly stalkerish behavior? Next week, I'm bringing you another heart-stopping supernatural romance. Demon King's daughter hides in human world. The angel sent to find her falls in love instead. Trust me, you won't want to miss that emotional roller coaster.